What if I told you that the solution to your constant overthinking was written down over 2,000 years ago? You're lying in bed, eyes wide open, replaying conversations from 5 years ago, or worrying about things that haven't even happened yet. Your heart races, your mind loops, and peace feels like a myth. But what if one forgotten philosopher, a Roman named Seneca, could hand you the calm you've been chasing? In this video, we're diving deep into real Stoic strategies, not just fluffy quotes. These are timeless, practical mental tools to help you break free from anxiety, overthinking, and fear instantly. If you've ever wished your mind had an off switch, this is the wisdom you've been looking for. Backhand index pointing right, stick around till the end, because I'll share Seneca's most powerful mental exercise. Let's begin. The thought spiral. Why you can't stop thinking. Let's be honest. Overthinking isn't just annoying. It's exhausting. You replay things you said. You predict disasters. You plan 10 steps ahead, only to tear them down and rebuild them in your mind again. It feels like you're solving problems, but you're really feeding a fire. And Seneca saw this centuries ago. He wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That's it. That's the disease. Overthinking is your imagination hijacking reality. It's your mind building castles made of fear and then getting trapped inside them. But here's what makes it worse. You think this spiral is making you more prepared. You tell yourself that thinking more means being more careful, more responsible. But Seneca would say, you're mistaking movement for progress. A rocking chair moves, but it doesn't go anywhere. Overthinking feels like effort, but it delivers nothing. Seneca's wisdom cuts through like a blade. He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. In other words, anxiety is borrowing pain from the future and paying interest on it every single day. You are suffering from problems that haven't happened yet and might never happen at all. So, what's the Stoic solution? Clarity through action. When thoughts spiral, don't think more. Don't logic your way out. Do. Take a walk. Journal. Send the message. Make the decision. Action destroys anxiety because action exists in the present, and anxiety lives in the future. Here's a Stoic trick. Next time you're trapped in thought, ask yourself, what am I solving right now? If the answer is nothing, then stop. You're not solving. You're suffering. This is the beginning of Stoic mental peace. Not silencing the mind entirely, but learning when to stop feeding it noise. Seneca didn't offer poetic inspiration. He gave us mental armor. Use it. 2. Fear is a liar. Seneca's formula for inner strength. Fear. It's the whisper in your ear before the interview. The tightening in your chest before a tough conversation. The illusion that the worst-case scenario is already written in stone. But Seneca, the Roman Stoic master of mental resilience, had a powerful truth to share. Fear is mostly imagination, a story we tell ourselves, and believe without proof. He once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Let that sink in. Our minds are constantly playing movies that haven't happened. Fearful outcomes, embarrassment, failure, rejection, and we sit there watching them like they're facts. But Seneca didn't just identify the problem. He gave us the cure. First, question the fear. Ask yourself, is this real? Or am I just predicting pain that might never come? When you put fear on trial, it often folds under cross-examination. Second, pre-rehearse adversity. This is what the Stoics called premeditatio malorum, imagining the worst-case scenario in advance, so you're never caught off guard. Ironically, facing it mentally makes it less scary. Lastly, embrace your own strength. Seneca believed we were built to endure more than we think. You act like mortals in all that you fear, he said, and like immortals in all that you desire. In other words, We fear small things as if they'll destroy us, but chase pleasure like we'll live forever. It's time to reverse that. Train your mind like a warrior. Don't let fear be your guide. Let reason lead the way. If you've ever felt paralyzed by anxiety, try this today. The next time fear speaks up, don't answer it with panic. Answer it with questions, with perspective, with stoic calm. Because once you see fear for what it is, a liar, you strip it of its power. 3. From racing thoughts to stoic calm, mastering the present moment. Let's be honest, most of the time, your mind isn't your ally. It's a noisy battlefield. One moment you're imagining a worst-case scenario that hasn't happened. The next, you're replaying something stupid you said years ago. You're not living. You're time-traveling between regrets of the past and fears of the future. But Stoicism, especially the teachings of Seneca, offers a radical solution: return to the present. Seneca believed that anxiety and fear thrive when the mind drifts. In his words, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Let that sink in. What you're afraid of usually isn't happening. It's just something you're mentally rehearsing. So the cure? Bring your mind back. Focus only on what you can control right now. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, just this exact moment. When you feel overwhelmed, stop. Ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do now that's fully in my control? That's where your power lives. This is where Seneca's mental discipline kicks in. To train your mind not to chase shadows, but to grip what is real. Not imaginary dangers. Not future outcomes. Just action, in the now. That's how a Stoic handles mental chaos. Not by fighting every thought, but by silencing the ones that don't belong to the present moment. Emotions are not your enemies. They're messengers, indicators, warnings from the subconscious. But here's where most people go wrong. They mistake those emotional alerts for absolute truths. And that's where the mental spiral begins. Anxiety whispers, you're not good enough. Fear says, you'll fail. Guilt yells, you should have done more. And instead of questioning these voices, we obey them like loyal soldiers taking orders from a panicked general. But Seneca, a man who faced exile, political instability, betrayal, and the looming threat of execution, saw through the illusion. He taught that emotions, while powerful, are not dictators. They're signals, temporary, and most importantly, optional in how we respond to them. In his writings, Seneca never claimed that a Stoic doesn't feel. In fact, he acknowledged emotions like fear, grief, and anger. But he believed that while we can't always control their arrival, we can control their impact. And that changes everything. His method wasn't about suppressing emotions, but interpreting them calmly, rationally, with inner clarity. Let's unpack how you can use Seneca's timeless wisdom to stop letting emotions hijack your peace. 1. Emotions as weather, not identity. Think of your emotions like passing weather patterns. A storm rolls in. It's loud. It's messy. But it doesn't define the sky. It passes. Seneca would say the same about your internal storms. Fear, panic, sadness. They don't define you. They're just momentary conditions. Most people, however, make the mistake of identifying with the emotion. I am anxious. I am angry. But the Stoic flips the language. I'm feeling anxiety. I'm observing anger. See the difference? It's subtle but powerful. One viewpoint traps you. The other gives you freedom. Seneca reminds us that when you treat emotions as part of your identity, you give them power they don't deserve. But when you observe them as passing clouds, signals to be understood, not obeyed, you regain command. This detachment isn't denial. It's discernment. You're no longer the storm. You're the sky watching it roll by. 2. Pause first, react later. The Stoic delay. Seneca was a master of pause. He knew that between stimulus and response, there's a sacred gap. And in that gap lies all your freedom. When emotion hits you hard, a wave of fear before a decision, a surge of anger during conflict, the average person reacts instantly. That's what anxiety wants. Impulsive action, knee-jerk decisions, emotional outbursts. But the Stoic pauses. Seneca believed that when emotions rise, it's time to slow everything down. Why? Because emotions distort. Anxiety makes small problems feel massive. Anger paints enemies where there are only misunderstandings. So instead of reacting, he advises to observe. Ask, is this emotion based on fact or assumption? What story am I telling myself right now? Would this matter a month from now? These questions short-circuit emotional chaos. They return your brain to reason. And that's what Stoicism is. Not the absence of feeling, but the ability to think clearly through the feeling. That clarity, that's power. 3. Premeditation of emotion. Train before the storm hits. Seneca wasn't just wise in crisis. He trained for it in advance. One of his favorite mental exercises was premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's not pessimism, it's preparation. He would mentally rehearse the worst. What if I lose my wealth? What if I'm exiled? What if tomorrow I die? To the modern mind, this sounds dark. But Seneca wasn't trying to scare himself. He was trying to inoculate himself. Like a vaccine that builds immunity through exposure. He believed you could build emotional resilience by confronting fears in your imagination before they show up in real life. And when they did arrive, he'd already faced them. Not in panic, but in clarity. Calmly, strategically, apply this to your life. Before a big day, ask, what's the worst that could happen? What will I do if things don't go my way? By mentally rehearsing the chaos, you disarm it. It loses its fangs. Fear shrinks. And when the emotional storm hits, you won't collapse. You'll be ready. 4. Separate the emotion from the event. Seneca famously said, "A wise man is indifferent to everything he cannot control." And that includes emotional reactions. Why? Because most emotional suffering isn't caused by the event. It's caused by our interpretation of the event. Think about that. Someone cuts you off in traffic. The act is neutral, but your story about the act creates the emotion. They disrespected me. People are always trying to take advantage of me. Now you're angry. Now you're shouting in your car. Not because of the event, but because of your meaning attached to it. Seneca's solution? Separate the two. Always ask, what actually happened? What am I adding to the story? The Stoic mindset strips away exaggeration. It removes assumptions. What's left is the truth. And with truth comes emotional clarity. When you realize that most of your stress is self-generated, built on distorted thoughts, you can start letting go of unnecessary suffering. 5. Control what you feed your mind. Seneca understood a concept that modern science now backs up. Your mind reflects what you consume. Just like your body becomes what you eat, your emotions become what you mentally absorb. That's why he warned against surrounding yourself with emotional people, chaotic environments, or mindless distractions. Not because he was judgmental, but because he knew emotional chaos is contagious. So ask yourself, are you constantly watching content that fuels anxiety? Are you spending time with people who complain, panic, or overreact? Are you starting your day with news, gossip, or drama? Seneca would say, you are feeding your mind poison and then wondering why you're sick. The Stoic solution? Be ruthless about your inputs. Read things that build mental strength. Listen to voices that promote calm. Protect your morning like sacred ground. If you want emotional clarity, don't just clean your house. Clean your mind's environment. 6. Turn emotion into action. Seneca didn't just believe in observation. He believed in transformation. Emotions weren't meant to be ignored. They were meant to be converted. He saw fear as a signal to prepare. He saw guilt as a cue to make amends. He saw frustration as fuel for improvement. Modern psychology agrees. When channeled correctly, emotions have energy. The problem isn't that you feel too much. It's that you don't use what you feel. You let anxiety fester instead of planning. You let anger boil instead of setting boundaries. You let shame linger instead of growing. Seneca's method is simple but revolutionary. Take the emotion, find the message, use it to guide wise action. Don't just feel, move. That's what makes Stoicism so empowering. It doesn't shame you for being emotional. It gives you the tools to turn emotions into motion. 7. End the day with self-audit, not self-blame. One of Seneca's most underrated practices was his nightly self-reflection. At the end of each day, he would sit quietly and ask himself, "What did I do right today? Where did I let emotion take over? What can I do better tomorrow?" Notice the tone, not harsh judgment, not self-punishment, just honest awareness. That's how clarity grows. Most people either ignore their emotional mistakes or beat themselves up for them. The Stoic, like Seneca, learns from them. Gently, firmly, with a steady hand, try this tonight. Before bed, spend 5 minutes in stillness. Review your emotional wins. Acknowledge your losses. Make a plan to improve. You'll sleep better. You'll wake stronger. And over time, you'll develop the inner calm of a true Stoic. Not because you never feel, but because you always understand. Final thought for this section. Seneca never promised that you'd never feel anxious or afraid again. What he promised was something better. The ability to face those emotions with grace, control, and unshakable mental clarity. When emotions rise, don't run. Don't react. Recognize them. Question them. Redirect them. Because at the end of the day, your emotions are tools. Use them wisely, and they'll build your peace. Let them rule you, and they'll destroy it. As Seneca would say, "He is most powerful who has power over himself." The peace you seek is already within you. Seneca's path to emotional clarity. We often search for peace like it's a lost artifact buried somewhere far away. In a better job, a new relationship, a different country, or some imagined future free of stress and struggle. But what if the very peace we're chasing is already inside us, waiting patiently to be uncovered? Seneca believed this deeply. In his writings, he didn't just philosophize about serenity. He taught how to live it, even in chaos. And not through escape, but through self-awareness. According to Seneca, peace doesn't come when everything around us quiets down. It comes when the war inside us does. Most of our suffering doesn't stem from events themselves, but from the judgments we attach to them. A delay becomes a disaster. A minor rejection becomes proof that we're unworthy. A moment of silence becomes unbearable loneliness. But Seneca urges us to pause, to ask, is the thing that troubles me truly outside me, or is it my interpretation? Emotional clarity begins when we start observing these automatic reactions instead of feeding them. When something upsets you, Seneca suggests this question. What part of this is in my control? This one question can untangle a storm of anxiety. Because when you realize that someone else's anger, a missed opportunity, or the uncertainty of tomorrow is not your burden to carry, you reclaim energy. You reclaim your mind. Peace is preserved not by avoiding disturbance, but by building inner stillness. Seneca teaches that clarity isn't some mystical state reserved for monks or sages. It's a practical result of self-examination. He advises us to perform a kind of daily audit at night. Ask yourself, What did I do today that was unnecessary? What stirred my emotions? What moments made me proud? This is not about guilt. It's about refinement. Every night, you become a little clearer, a little wiser. You catch yourself quicker. You speak slower. You respond more, react less. And with this, peace starts growing. Not as an achievement, but as a habit. Now here's where it gets powerful. Once you stop chasing peace in the external world, you stop being a slave to it. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's moods, news headlines, or fluctuating outcomes. You become self-contained, anchored, stoic. And this doesn't mean being cold or indifferent. It means being in control. You still feel deeply, but your feelings don't govern you. This is Seneca's path to emotional clarity. It doesn't require money, fame, or the perfect morning routine. It requires presence, reflection, and the courage to face your inner world with honesty. When you realize that the peace you seek is already within you, everything changes. You stop reaching outward, and you start returning inward, again and again, until peace is no longer a visitor, but your natural state.